when you're talking about going up against the number one team in the world, sort of combining the experiences that they've had on the international stage, particularly against the US, we're talking 1-17-1 between these two teams. It's not great. So I can't help but also think a little bit about the more recent meetings between these two teams. We're going back in the memory bank here. If you don't want to hear about perhaps an ugly game, put us on mute now. But we were chatting about this when we were content planning. We were like, oh goodness, the last time they faced them was during the 2022 SheBelieves Cup, and it ended up being a 5-0 win for the United States. But it was in the manner in which that win came to life. We're talking multiple own goals, 3 of them all within that first half. Tough scene for sure.
Tough. Yeah, I mean, this game was tough, really bad for New Zealand, and they've been struggling most recently. Yeah, I like that you gave a shout to them, top 25 ranking, being number 24 in FIFA right now. But when you look at that game that happened just under a year ago, it was during the SheBelieves Cup in 2022. This was a game for the United States that maybe had a little bit of foreshadowing, right? Hindsight's always 2020, but the United States opened this match against New Zealand in February during that SheBelieves Cup and was putting a lot of pressure on. They were whipping crosses into the box. They were putting New Zealand's defense under a lot of pressure, and that forced 3 own goals to open the match in the 3rd minute, in the 6th minute, and in the 36th minute. So at this point, I remember watching this game. I think you and I were even texting about it at this point, Sandra, because we're at just over a half hour into this match for the SheBelieves Cup, USA versus New Zealand, and it's now 3-0 to the US, and the US has yet to score a goal. So half of me was happy. Hey, the US is winning. They're putting a lot of pressure on. They're getting shots off. We saw different kinds of lineups for Vlatko Andonovski. This is when we saw Purse starting up top with Sophia Smith and Katarina Macario, Christy Mewes, and Ashley Sanchez in the midfield. There was a lot of potential with this group during this opening 30 minutes, opening 40 minutes. But the fact that they hadn't scored a goal themselves, they were all own goals, was something that concerned me a little bit. Not in the concerning way where I'm like, let's pull players, let's change things up a whole lot. But it's like, okay, you're putting pressure on and you're getting goals and you're getting results, but how much of that is the mistakes of your opposition, the mistakes of New Zealand, body positioning, tracking back, marking runners, poor goaltending, and how much of it is actually the work of the attackers? So that was something that was a little concerning to me, maybe at the halfway point of that last match, 3-0, and you're going into halftime, but your players have yet to score a goal. That changed in the second half. We had Ashley Hatch. She gets one around the 51st minute for the United States, makes it 4-0. And then Mallory Swanson, formerly Mallory Pugh, gets one in the stoppage time at the end of that game. So it ends up being 5-0 to the United States over the Football Ferns in that SheBelieves Cup. And they did get 2 goals. But I think that match is probably fresh in these players' minds because we've got Ashley Hatch back on this roster for the United States. We've got Midge Purse back on this roster for the United States. 2 players that saw significant time in that game. Purse got the start and then ended up subbing out, and Hatch came in and gets a goal. And likewise for the Football Ferns, New Zealand has to be remembering that match. They have got to be pissed off about that match. Right.
I think it's important to know that we're coming up on almost like a year removed from that previous game in SheBelieves Cup, and I think it's also, we should maybe touch on that a little bit too, like how over the course of this last year, some of the constant rotation that we've seen on the USA side specifically, in terms of players who have been out in and out of the pool and various camps with this national team. So, to sort of map things out and see that even though we've been covering the US team on our side and we've had question marks around this roster, like whether or not we were going to see an Ashley Hatch, if we were going to see the return of a Midge Purse, someone who we didn't see participate in those later friendlies in 2022, only to hit the reset button here in 2023 and look back on this SheBelieves Cup game that took place almost a year ago and see the impact that some of these players had within that match then. are they going to get the opportunity to do that once more, nearly a year later against the same opposition? So I'm a little curious about it. There's not going to be a Katarina Macario in this one,
No
against New
Sophia
Zealand.
Smith.
No
No
Sophia
Sophia
Smith.
Smith.
So there's certain things that I think are opportunities there for both sides of the pitch to maybe get some new challenges. But I think if you're the United States and you're looking at this pair of friendlies in front of you, if you're looking at the history of the oppositions in front of you, if you're not coming out with a win, there's a
Yeah.
possibility to have a layer of disappointment, right? Those champagne problems that always come with
Right.
sort of covering this team and whether you're a player playing with this team.
And
Um,
I mean,
but in,
Sandra, I think it's also important to look at a little bit of the recent history of the US team because they went on a 3-game skid just 4 games ago. That was not that long ago. Remember, they closed out 2022 in Europe with matches against England and Spain. They end up dropping both of those 2-1 against England, 2-0 against Spain. And then in November, they're hosting friendlies in the States against Germany. They dropped that first one 2-1.
yeah,
Germany defeats the United States, and then USA gets back on track things. They end up winning 2-1 over that final match against Germany. That one in New Jersey at Red Bull Arena. So I think it's also really important to look at the history of just the United States as well. We're talking about the history of just New Zealand. They're also coming off of a bit of a skid themselves. They won a pair in September against Mexico and the Philippines. They won those pairs of friendlies. Then in October, they played against Japan, lost that one 2-0. Then New Zealand played against South Korea. That was at home. They didn't have to travel for that one. They lost 1-0 and then tied 1-1 against that. So this is a Football Ferns team that is
kind of
looking
streaky.
yeah, they're not a lot of consistency there. And frankly, if you're the Football Ferns, you're looking at the United States saying, hey, they had a bit of a not so great streak themselves. Yeah, they got that one win to end it. But I mean, if you're New Zealand, you're saying this is our time to
Okay.
strike
So you're
against
you're
this
saying New
United.
Zealand's going to look at this as like a massive opportunity then?
I think you have to. A little bit of
Yeah,
redemption. You're now playing at home. I mean, the history between US and New Zealand is tough for New Zealand. As
yeah,
you said, 17-1-1. The lone loss that the Americans suffered was the very first meeting in
yeah,
1987.
yeah.
So that long-term history is not as relevant. Also, the one draw coming between these two sides. That coming in 2013 in October, it was a 1-1 draw during a friendly. But most recently, it's been all wins for the U.S.
I'm also just sort of looking at the impact individual players might have for New Zealand going into these type of matches. I mean, I think folks are going to be super familiar with Ali Riley, defender who represents Angel City FC. Probably going to be responsible with handling some things on the back line there for New Zealand. But there's a ton of players across New Zealand's roster who have ties to the U.S., whether it's specifically for NWSL or collegiate systems. So gonna look forward to seeing those type of players if they get any minutes or if they get runs out there to go up against the United States, whether it's somebody like Hannah Blake out of University of Michigan. We've got Ava Collins, a midfielder out of St. John's University. Rachel Daly also is St. John's alum. So I'm eager to see if any of these type of players will make some appearances over the 2 games. And I think that's the other thing that's standing out for me too. There's so much of this history between these 2 teams that are very much just sort of one-off type of matches, but this is a 2-game series between these 2 teams. So I'm interested to see, yes, this first match tonight between the 2 of them, but what are those adjustments that they might make going into that second game, whether it's the United States or New Zealand. So I'm eager to cover these games as a pair of games with you and sort of see if we have some new and interesting things to talk about after this first game tonight.